We're here with Laura Bryant and Barry Klein, and you always bring such exciting things. So we're going to do drop stitch today?
On purpose drop stitches. You know how when you, lost a stitch and it looks like this? Well, we figured out all kinds of ways to make that be really useful.
Good. That's good.
And the first thing I want to do is define what it is.
Okay.
It is, in fact, when
it's
you
not
get
a
all,
oops.
It's not an oops.
Okay.
It's also not the same thing as elongated stitches, which is when you make extra wraps on your stitch.
Like you would have here.
Yeah, and when you do that, you get long stitches, and you get something of the same look in that you have threads that are long. These scarves are done with both elongated stitches and drop stitches, okay? Elongated ones are vertical, and dropped stitches are horizontal.
Okay.
And in the most basic form, here's a piece of stockinette where every 8th stitch has been dropped and allowed to go down. And you can see that you get a nice long open piece, and then these 2 stitches are kind of spreading.
And we should tell everybody, you drop it at the end.
You do.
Don't
You have
drop
to,
it as you knit
correct. You have to knit the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then at the end. Otherwise, you don't have that extra fabric, that extra thread to make the space.
Okay.
Okay. So basic stockinette, of course, on the reverse side, you're getting the pearl.
Yeah.
What it does do, though, is makes a nice kind of fluted fabric. So that's kind of fun.
Pleats it up.
Yeah, it pleats it up, makes it softer. But these stitches do want to spread.
Okay.
And we've kind of told a little color story here. We've picked a lot of different yarns. We've done solids, we've done prints, colors, mohair, lots of texture. Because as the first things that Laura showed you, they were printed or hand-dyed yarns, but they were one texture. And so we've also done things like the wrap I've got next to me, where we've put lots of different textures together. And in this case, it's self-fringed. So you start by leaving a tail, you cast on all of your stitches, and you're working across the row. And we've incorporated reverse stockinette, stockinette, and then one stitch that gets dropped. And because you're working with so many different textures and fibers and colors, in order to keep your place, you're going to want to throw markers in place. Right. So as you're setting it up on your knitting, you're going to put a few stitches, a marker, delineate what will be your drop stitch, and put markers across the row, and it'll just make life a whole lot easier.
And you're really telling everybody you're not knitting it in the length, you're knitting it.
Right, you're casting on your width.
The whole,
your width.
Yes, the whole,
right.
the
so
whole
basically
length.
the wingspan.
Yeah, and there's some special techniques that we'll get to in a minute that really allow you to have a correct cast on and a correct bind off, and because when you drop those stitches, the fabric grows in width. Okay, so we have to accommodate that. And I did a little research, and I tried it on thin yarns and thick yarns, and I measured, and 1 dropped stitch equals about 3 knitted stitches in width.
After it's dropped.
Yeah, after it's dropped.
Okay.
And so,
does it matter if you're doing stockinette or garter?
no,
or the width is the same no matter what pattern stitch you're doing?
It's about the same.
Cool.
So here's the pattern that will be on the website, and this is a simple garter stitch dropped scarf. And it starts with 3 stitches, then 1 that gets dropped, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4. And instead of putting markers in, I kept the drop stitch in stockinette. So while this is garter in between, there was a line the whole time. It's a little easier to drop a stockinette stitch than it is to drop a garter stitch.
And it makes it easier not to have markers in
Right,
place.
sure.
It becomes more visual, and you're on a solid yarn.
Yeah,
well, it's a pretty pattern when you do it that way.
Exactly, and we'll show you how this works in just a second. I just want to talk about the one that's over
I'll
here.
Move. Yes.
This has had 2 stitches dropped. So you
it's
can
wider.
really see how wide those threads are dropping. Yeah,
This is
and it's
beautiful.
also 5 different yarns. Again, self-fringed just on the one edge.
Yes.
And this one, instead of being done the long way, was done the short
narrow
way.
way.
Yeah. Okay, so now let me show you how to do this.
That's fabulous.
So here is this little swatch that I've prepared, and this is the same pattern as the scarf that I'm wearing. It's a little thicker yarn, so it's a little easier to see. Okay, whoops. So I'm ready to do
And
my...
Laura, can I ask you one question? This is not the width of this scarf, right?
Correct, it's a little narrower.
Okay.
Time,
didn't want them
time
to
limits,
think
you know,
that
yes.
this was-
Well, you'll see just exactly how wide this will
Okay.
get because we're going to actually take it down. So I've defined my drop stitch with these lines of stockinette here, and the rest is garter stitch. I'm ready to do my last row,
Okay.
and it's knit, knit. Now, there's my purl stitch on this side. A little harder to see on the wrong side. the stitch on either side of it I'm going to twist. So instead of knitting into the front, I'm knitting
into the back?
into the back.
Okay, so it twists it.
Yep, then I'm purling that one and knitting, whoops,
Into the back
into
of
the
that.
back.
Right, so you do it on each side of it, and it locks it.
So it won't,
It doesn't
Sort of-
open up or stretch
right,
when you drop
like
that
it
extra
did here
stitch.
on this scarf.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll see on this nice wool that we're going to get,
It's a subtle different shade, but it does make a difference over time, and depending on how you're
Right.
wearing it. If you're wearing it as a wrap and gravity kicks in, that little stitch stretches more and opens up. So this is just a security.
I would call it a stabilizer.
yeah,
Right.
it is. That's a really good way of putting it. Okay, so now we're going to do the bind off. I'll come back to the cast on in a minute.
Okay.
But we're going to do the bind off here, and because this gets wider,
Down at the
because
bottom.
this gets wider, if the cast on edge is, or the bound off edge, if either edge is as tight as the fabric, you're going to have a
Oh, so
little,
you have to
you're going
open
to have
it.
a little
Right, it'll
crimped in
crimp.
edge. So, right, you have to open it. So to do that, the first 2 stitches are normal because they're just regular bind off.
Yeah,
And is the third.
all right.
Now,
Is that because it's on the edge?
that's because it's normal knitting.
Okay,
Right, it's just normal bind off.
okay.
So now we've come to the drop stitch. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm dropping
Right.
it off. Now, I'm going to do a yarn over
Ah,
and another yarn over and pass it over and a third yarn over and
'Cause
pass it over. Because remember, 3
3
stitches
stitches,
per.
yeah.
And then I'm going to continue binding off until I get to the next.
so that formed a bridge.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so now you've done that, Laura.
Okay.
We
I
need
gotta
to
get
show how to,
Right.
got to get to the other one.
to the
as well.
cast on. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm
I'll
going
trade
to.
you.
No, I got to do the cast on, dear. So, berries. Okay. So here,
Oh, yeah,
see,
just pull it.
boom,
Yeah.
it just ladders down.
Oh, what a
so
neat
now,
pattern. Yeah,
I'm going to cut just a little bit of this off.
here's scissors. And show them how to cast on because
Just
you need
going
a
to take this
special.
off. Yes, because you need a special cast on.
Yeah.
This is the one that I found to be the best. It allows, it would be very good to do it on a bigger needle, which I don't have. You start with a 1 loop,
Sure.
you make a stitch,
And
you put it on the left-hand needle.
Okay.
You make a stitch, you
Does
put
it
it
have
on
a
the
name?
left-hand.
Looks-
It is a knitted on cast on.
Okay, that's how I normally.
And it's getting a twist to it. Instead of
Yes.
just transferring the stitch
Yep.
on, Laura's picking it up from
Well,
the opposite side and adding a little
That
twist.
is just great. We thank you. You always come with lots of knowledge.